afternoon. Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove. I'm Father Alexander. We now come on our 200th step in our walking tour through the Bible to one of the very greatest of all Psalms, the most memorable of all Psalms, Psalm 136, brackets 137, what we usually refer to as by the rivers of Babylon or by the waters of Babylon. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept, remembering Zion. On the poplars that grew there, we hung up our harps. For it was there that they asked us, our captors, for songs, our oppressors for joy. Sing to us, they said, one of Zion's songs. Oh, how could we sing the song of the Lord on alien soil? If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. And let my tongue cleave to my mouth, if I remember you not, if I prize not Jerusalem above all my joys. Well, that's the first 6 verses of the psalm. I'll talk about the last 3 verses in a moment. What is this psalm about? Well, first of all, it's a very beautiful set of words, even though they're in translation. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept. It's got a wonderful rhythm to it, wonderful motion. There's a famous novel, I think, entitled By Grand Central Terminal, I Sat and Wept. The idea of sitting and weeping it's a very evocative image. And what were they doing? This is, of course, nothing to do with the temple because the Israelites are in exile. There they remembered Zion. They remembered a place that was far away. They remembered a place to which they could not return because it no longer existed. Now, what's so good about this psalm, about this poem, is that it evokes that sense that we've all felt, the sense of nostalgia for the past, the sense that there is no going back, and yet that's what we want to do. We want to go back to the past. We are all in love with our childhood, and we're never going to be able to go back to our childhood. We're never going to recreate the innocence and happiness of our youth. In fact, when we were children, we were frequently miserable, I'm sure, but we've forgotten about the misery. All we remember is the nice part of being children. None of us are going to go back to the Garden of Eden, the place where we walked with God, the place where we were happy in union with our Creator, that marvelous place where we had everything we wanted. And that place we carry around inside our hearts. We have been exiled from the garden and we can never go back. If you remember, God put an angel with a flaming sword to block the path to the garden. It's unreachable. We've lost the garden, and similarly, the Jews in exile, they have lost their place of happiness, Jerusalem, where they dwelt with God. So this nostalgia, I think, is a constant in human nature, and nostalgia is not to be condemned. Rather, it's got to be nostalgia for the right things. And then looking back to the past, we then need to fortify ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we going to do in the future? And how can we use this nostalgia for the past to build a better future? So in other words, by the rivers of Babylon, where they hung up their harps and where they said they couldn't sing a song of Zion on alien soil, where they hoped their right hands would wither if they forgot Jerusalem. What they actually come up with as a positive in this desolate sadness that they feel for the lostness of Jerusalem, they've said, if I prize not Jerusalem above all my joys. In other words, in their sadness to be exiles, they realize Jerusalem is the greatest of their joys. In other words, they now value what they once had and didn't value enough when they had it. Exiles from the presence of God, they now long for the presence of God. So we should use our nostalgia to sharpen our desires for that which is good. If we have a nostalgia for happiness, warmth, the sunlit uplands of childhood, we need to start building happiness and warmth here and now. If we have a nostalgia for the virtue of the past, we need to start practicing the virtues of the present, which will grow to eternal life. Let's not let us look back to what we have lost. Let's look forward to what we can gain, namely eternal life with God forever. Now, this in fact did happen to the Jews. They had lost the temple, they got it back, but then they lost it again, the second temple, and then they constructed a temple with words. In other words, they became people of the book rather than people of the temple. They'd been people of the book before, but they became people of the book par excellence. We are people of the book, but we're more than just people of the book. We're people of the liturgy. We're people of the image. We're people of the tabernacle. We're people of the communion of saints. All these wonderful things we can do. We can enjoy the presence of God here and now. It's not just something we once know, it's something we know now, and we can know even more deeply in the future. Now, what about these last three lines, these last three verses? Well, it says, if I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Then the remembrance of Jerusalem causes pain. And then it says, remember, Lord. So it asks God to remember. They're remembering that which causes them sadness. Now it's asking God, remember, O Lord, to the Edomites' cost, the day of Jerusalem, how they said, down with it, raise it to the ground. In other words, O God, please remember what these Edomites, Babylonians or whoever they are, have done to your city of Jerusalem, the ones who raise it to the ground, the ones who completely destroyed it, the ones who made it impossible for us to go back to Jerusalem. Remember to the Edomites' cost. Please remember this, God, and hold it against them. So, not very charitable. Usually we should pray for our enemies, but not here. Here we're doing the opposite of praying to our enemies. We're praying for our enemies. We're praying to God that he remembers our enemies and punishes our enemies. Not very charitable. Daughter of Babel, doomed to destruction, in other words, the Babylonian oppressor, a blessing on anyone who treats you as you treated us. So the desire for revenge. May whoever is nasty to you be blessed. May your enemies flourish. Don't forgiveness, reconciliation, not a squeak of it. And a blessing on anyone, and this is really gruesome, who seizes your babies and shatters them against a rock. So, as you know, I think it was done to Caligula's daughter when Caligula and his wife Caesonia were murdered. They picked up the girl by the ankles and whacked her against a marble column till her brains fell out of her skull. In other words, that is the image there. The idea of killing a child, killing a baby, in this really nasty way. And why kill a baby? A baby is innocent. It's just it's spite, pure spite. So after this beautiful evocation of nostalgia for Jerusalem, the psalm descends into vitriolic hatred of the oppressors of Jerusalem, the oppressors of the chosen people, the Babylonians. And it completely forgets that the Jews brought the destruction of Jerusalem and their exile on themselves in two senses. First of all, by not obeying the law of the Lord, not being faithful to God, and that's clear from the history books and of the Old Testament. Secondly, politically, by not obeying the king of Babylon, but by rebelling against him. Babylon was a superpower. They were a minnow. They really were playing with fire in trying to defy the king of Babylon. It was a very foolish thing to do. So, no self-knowledge there at all. So, no wonder these last three verses get omitted. They, in fact, completely mark a turning point in tone for this psalm. If I do not count Jerusalem the greatest of my joys, and then remember, Lord, etc. So, a desire for Jerusalem is very important. The praise of Jerusalem is very important. Hatred of our enemies is not so important. I think we learn by opposites here. Let's not hate our enemies. Let's rather find reconciliation with them. But for these people who wrote this psalm, that reconciliation was still a long way off. All the best. Bye.